you are some of the youngest people that I've ever known who are able to build a successful practice.
I'm building something that's bigger than me, right? We're building hopefully something which is going to impact the local community. You'll have days where it's really like, you feel like you failed, but you don't have, it's reframing that. You don't think, oh, I've failed today. Today there was a lot to learn.
Exactly that.
Today there was a lot we could improve on. A lot of people call me lucky. I just work really hard and I create my own luck. So I would say my number one is location. You've got to pick the right location. Second thing is personal branding. And my final takeaway, you've just got to put in the hours. You've got to put in the hard work. You've got to enjoy the process. If you're not passionate, don't start, because you're going to need to do stuff that you're going to have to dig deep. You're going to have to grind out.
Welcome to Squat Success Podcast. I'm really excited today to have Laurie with us. Laurie owns a beautiful practice near Bristol, and Laurie came into the journey a little bit later on. I think you'd already found your location by the time we met. And Laurie, I'll pass it over to you if you give an introduction as to you, Esme, and what you do.
Sure. Well, firstly, mate, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on your lovely podcast. You're doing so well. And yes, you're right. I kind of did it in the wrong order. I think we'd already found a building, a site. We'd already started the process, and then we kind of realized very quickly it'd be good to have someone who could mentor us through the journey and help us make sure that we make the right decisions. Big believer that your success and your growth can be compounded a lot quicker if, rather than making the mistakes, you learn from people who've already potentially made the mistakes but been through that journey. You already know this, mate. I'm going to say it again, but you've given us a hell of a lot of support over the last year or so appreciate that. And it really does make it a lot easier, and that's not me I don't know, promoting Bobby's course, but being part of a group like that was really instrumental to what we've done, and in such a short amount of time, really.
Yeah, no, thank you, Laurie. So, I think the biggest thing there I would take away from that for everybody is I think the community. So coming into that community has obviously been a big game changer for yourselves, and having access to other people that have done what you want to do before you, and people that are doing it in real life at the same time, people that have just done it right before you, to give you that guidance and the right steps. One of the things for me is that, for me personally, you guys are massively inspirational, because you are some of the youngest people that I've ever known, who are able to do and build a successful practice at your age. And there's loads of different factors behind that, which we'll explore during the whole conversation. But to me, that is spectacular, because I have a huge amount of conversations with loads of different dentists, different age groups, some younger than yourselves, some about the same age, who I sometimes have to say, no, it's not the right time for you. However, for yourselves, it was. And what I really want to explore is, why was it the right time for yourselves when compared to other people it's not? So if you're happy to just share a little bit about how the journey has gone so far with the practice, the squat, and what do you feel has made it successful, in your aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been quite interested in the business of dentistry, and it's always something I've wanted to pursue. I wanted my autonomy. So I've always known that, I don't know, I don't think I was ever fully content being an associate. I like the idea that I could be the captain of my ship, in a sense, and be able to kind of guide that ship. When you say uh, you're so young, and obviously achieving that so young, how have you done it? In a sense, it's easier in a sense, because we don't have a lot of the other limitations that naturally comes with, as you get a bit older. You have kids, we don't have kids, you have other commitments, you're less likely to take risks. We don't have that. I was able to sell my home. We had a rental property. We were able to sell those to fund the practice, to make that an easier transition for us. We were able to move in with Ez's parents. We don't have kids. Yes, we have a 4-year-old Cocker Spaniel who's like pretty much treated like a baby, but we don't have so much commitment that a lot of people do. So I mean, personally, I say hats off to those people doing it with young kids like yourself, like Aisha, like Matt. Like, there's so many more inspirational people who are doing this with young kids, which I just think, wow. And then the other thing is that there's two of us, right? So there's me and Esme, and we're basically yin and yang. So Ez is very much the organized one, very good at kind of making sure that we don't go off track and everything's taken care of and that there's nothing missed. Whilst I'm the ideas man. I'm always driving the ship forward. I'm thinking about the next thing, growing the practice, getting to the next point. And I love that. And I'm super passionate about like dentistry. I always have been. And ultimately I think that's probably why I'm here. That was so soon because I'm super passionate. And then it comes down to how much hard work are you willing to put in? And we work really hard, and you can imagine that, right? So it's it's easier for us to put in the hours when we don't have the other life commitments that a lot of people have. And we're a great partnership, we're a great team. We're both willing to work as hard as each other. We're both willing to do the late nights, the weekends. And I'm not talking patience. We just do a 9 to 5. But when we're not doing that, we're thinking about how are we going to grow the business? How are we going to make it more efficient, more effective? And that's as important, I would say, in the growth of your business as actually seeing your patients. You can't have one without the other. And
Yeah.
ultimately, patient experience is what people are after nowadays. And the patient experience takes a lot more time to get right. And it takes a lot of fine tuning. And we haven't even got to, I don't know, the idea of the team that I've got around me. So, like, there's so many factors that play a part. To be honest, you can't do this on your own. You can't. It's impossible. There's too many moving parts for you to be the only successful part. So it's not me. It's me, it's the team, it's my support network, it's Esme, it's our team, it's the fact that we chose based on values and culture that has really helped us be, as you say, quite successful quite early on.
So I think one of the first things I want to touch upon there is when I listen to your story and where you've come from and what you've built and listening to what you've done to enable you to achieve that. The first aspect is sacrifice. So when you talked about how you've had to sell property, you've had to move back in with parents, to me, that is a huge amount of sacrifice that you've put out from. So, irrespective of the people that have children, like, don't get me wrong, it's difficult, it's different, for people that have kids and whatnot. However, you've sacrificed something so valuable upfront to enable you to do that in the first place. Because how many dentists can you have conversations with where you ask them to sell your property or move back in with your parents to enable you to do this in the first place, and they will say to you, no, that's never going to happen. And the ability for yourselves to have that in your own mind frame that that's what it's going to take, and we might have to do that. It won't be forever, but we'll do it if we have to. That's incredible because not a lot of other people have that mindset because you understand, from the outset that even if I do this, it's not forever. However, if I really want to get my goals and hit what I want to do and build my businesses, then that's what it takes. And I don't even think you guys yourselves understand the sacrifice that you've taken
I,
up front
I
to,
don't know if it's that. I think it's that my mindset's different to that. So I'm building something that's bigger than me, right? Houses will come and go. I'm not emotionally that attached to the house that I had. It wasn't my forever home. It was a home.
yeah.
Yes, we made a decent amount of money on the home and it helped us get to the next level. But for me, it was just, this probably comes back to my mindset, which is quite business orientated. So for me, it's like, it's all about using capital to get you to that next level. And I'm building something that's so much bigger than both of us. We're building hopefully something which is going to impact the local community, but also be something that we can hopefully step back a little bit from, have people working within that ecosystem. And then I can start to design the life that I want. For me, sacrificing, I don't know, 2, 3 years to get this to where it needs to be is not a huge deal for me.
When you say sacrifice in 2, 3 years, what are you sacrificing? What does that mean?
So, look, okay, you have to be incredibly passionate about what you're doing to put this many hours into anything. And I would say, and you know this, you've been there, you're working 70, 80-hour weeks maybe every week, right? That's a lot of hours to put in for anyone. And then you add in the fact that you're doing clinical dentistry maybe 5 days a week. If you want to get to this level as quickly as we have, you have to do that, right? So that's the sacrifice. The sacrifice is the hours, it's the going home and doing more work, it's the working on your I don't know, protocols. It's the recruitment aspect. It's the finding the right team players. It's expanding the team. It's the going and looking at expanding surgeries, all that kind of jazz. That is the sacrifice. I don't know. I kind of look at it as we're very soon going to be maxed out at this clinic, and that for me is going to be where we have a bit of normality, a little bit of peace. But don't ask me if we're going to do it all again because I don't know.
That's a great question that we'll ask later on. Rewinding on the back of all of that, one of the big things that I want to ask is, for younger dentists, they ask me these questions all the time. Is it the right time? Is it not? And what do I need to do to get to that point? I want to be entrepreneurial. I want to set up a practice. I've got a keen interest in business. It's actually really fascinating. I've had so many dental students reach out to me recently who are in their final year of dentistry saying, Bobby, we'd love to speak to you because we love learning about the business of dentistry. And when I think back now, when I was at university, when I was in my final year, my two concerns were finals and partying. Literally, I didn't have any knowledge or interest in going out and learning about the whole dental world, but there's a massive shift there without a doubt. And then when I think back now, one of the questions I would ask you is, Laurie, when you guys are still a lot younger than most people in dentistry who set up practices, especially being under the age of 30, what gave you that drive in the first place to want to do that? Like, why? What was your why? Why did you want to set up in practice? Why did you not think, I just want to be a super associate? I just want to go and work in other practices happily. Your attitude, clinical skill set, you've been learning, growing. You could happily make, 2, 3, 400 grand a year as an associate at a very young age, which a lot of other dentists can't. So, what was the decision process?
Okay, yeah, let's take it back a step, I guess. So when I left university, I just wanted to be a good clinician. That was my radar. That was it. It was like, right, how can I be a good clinician? So I spent my 20s being a course junkie. I'm now 30, so I am out of my 20s. I can't use that card anymore. So I'm not under 30, but I am 30.
But you were before you set your practice up.
There we go. Yeah, so it counts. But I spent my 20s going on courses, building my skill set, doing everything that I could to be the best clinician I could be. But very quickly, I realized that I wasn't what you'd call a standard associate. Yeah. My responsibilities were more than that. What I wanted to get involved with was more than that. I wanted to be involved with the KPIs. I wanted to stay late. I wanted to be involved with the courses. I wanted to be involved with the teaching the team members. For me, that was the kind of start or the catalyst to be like, you know what, like I really enjoy this side of dentistry. I was really into the numbers. I was really into the
But what my question is, why did you enjoy that?
So I don't think I think it comes down to what makes you tick. Okay. So like I know that just sitting there in my surgery, in my four walls, seeing patients all day was amazing for me and I loved the experiences, but it wasn't enough. So I wanted more than that. So the business of dentistry or owning a practice was the next logical step. I was lucky I had a lot of autonomy within the clinics I've worked at, but I still had to answer to someone else. Every time I came up with a good idea, I had to run it by someone else who ultimately was always a lot older than I was, and therefore I was always the junior, right? I wanted to be able to make my own decisions, trust my gut, and really steer the ship to how I would like it to be. Did actually start to take on a more managerial role as an associate. It was kind of like a profit share agreement of such, but I was very much the junior partner. But with that, I got really good exposure to check that this was actually something I wanted. And I thrived off it. I loved it. I loved the fact that I was more involved in that process. I was involved in teaching the team members. I was involved in all the other steps that go with having a practice. And then, to be honest, we were looking for buildings for some time, but nothing was coming up. The practice I was previously at, they were asking me if we should do another site, so okay, go in together. And then I was getting a few of these kind of these offerings whereby you're recruited almost like a DSO model, and you're basically working as the lead dentist within a clinic, but you don't have to worry about the compliance at kind of half of the practice, and you really focus on your clinical aspect. And at that point, I was like, you know what? Me and Ez, we've been doing this for a year and a half. We can do this. Let's make our impact. let's benefit a local community and let's see what we can do. And yes, there was risk. Yes, I was shit scared before we opened, but ultimately it's the best thing I've ever done. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I still remember the conversations we used to have
Yeah,
before you opened, where that risk in your head was so real,
yeah.
and it was like, Bob, like, is this gonna work? Like, how are we gonna do it?
Yeah, I think it didn't help because obviously I got let go of my
Yeah,
previous job early because of obviously opening a new clinic. So I didn't have a plan B. And at the time, the fact that I was going to have to be in my squat practice that had no patients 5 days a
mm,
week was really scary. But ultimately, it's the best thing that ever happened to me because if I had, I think I saw on one of your podcasts, someone talked about this analogy of a canoe. Whereas if you've got to be in the canoe rather than, I can't remember who said it, but ultimately, if you have one foot in your practice and one foot as an associate, it's
yeah,
never going to be the same impact as if
yeah.
you just go for it. So you have to go for it.
And yeah, how would you feel if you feel all of the fear that you had and all of the people that said to you, it's not possible, or you can't do it, you can't make it work, and you didn't end up doing it? How do you think you'd feel right now?
Yeah,
I
no.
know it's hard to answer because you're not in that situation,
Mm.
but it's still a great thing to explore. You know, if you didn't take the risk, how do you think you'd feel right now today?
Well, so my personality, and I'm probably sure you're the same. I'm always thinking about the next thing. Okay, so I'm thinking, right, what's the next venture? I've had so many business ideas. I've dipped my toe in HMO and all that jazz. I've looked at many different options. So I don't switch off very well. So I'm sure I would still be thinking, right, I need to get a clinic. I need to get a clinic. So it would have happened. I would have been probably continuing to look, and I'm almost certain I would have still had a clinic. I was never going to go down the line of buying an existing practice just because
Yeah,
that didn't really align with what I was trying to achieve. But yeah, I don't think, I guess you could say I'd be gutted, but I don't think I'd not have a clinic.
yeah.
So I would just have got another clinic. That was always my path. That was always what I wanted to do.
I think the biggest thing that I take away from that is something that I talk about a lot in squat success and in general is that I think the fact that you had it in your mindset, no matter what, that you're going to do something and it's going to be in business, it's going to be entrepreneurial, and you're going to be successful. But I think the fact that you planted that seed so firm in your head so early on that you've made it work
Mhm.
because you've just found the solutions that will make that happen no matter what, whatever avenue it was, whether it was going to be property or practice ownership, whatever it was, associateship, you just knew you had that idea. And what I see a lot of is I see a huge amount of self doubt, a huge amount of non belief in people within themselves that they can do it, that they can be successful. I'm I can speak for it because I came from that background and I had a huge amount of that myself, and it took me 2 3 years to bash that out of my head
Mm.
to get to the point where it was like I don't care. I'm not bothered. I'm not scared about risk. I'm not scared about anything in life anymore because it is what it is. I just know that no matter what, I will find the right people, the right solutions, and I will make whatever opportunity that comes. If I want to do it, I will make it work. Fair enough, there will be some failures within that. I will learn, but I won't treat it as a failure. I will learn from it and carry on, and whatever else can I do. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, I think, from your success is that you had that embedded in you at a much earlier age than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So obviously I speak to a huge amount of dentists, and that fear is real, is significant,
Mm.
and it holds a lot of people back. So I've had the same conversation actually over the last 3 or 4 days with a few different dentists, and it fascinates me now when I think about this. So if you think about this, if you're going to set up a practice or buy a practice, it's going to cost you about maybe £100,000 of your own cash. Everything else you can leverage. You can get loans, you can get asset finance, whatever it is. And then off the back of that, you can build a really successful practice and equity, and you can build millions of pounds off the back of that in the long term, not short term. It's not a cash grab. However, when I still speak to dentists, the biggest fear is that I'm not going to make it work and I'm going to go bankrupt and all these negative connotations. And then when you rewind that and think about it, So the first aspect is there's very, very few dentists that fail when they're going to practice ownership. That's a start. There are some, I speak to a fair few of them, and it's clear they've done the wrong things and they just don't have the right attitude, the right mindset. Second thing is that if you're an associate and you can earn, between one to £250,000 a year as a dentist, and if you've upskilled, you've got a valuable skill set, if even in a worst case scenario, if I was going to go to practice ownership and I ended up spending 100 grand of my own cash and everything went really, really badly wrong, off the back of that, what are my expenses that are left? I'm going to pay back my loan and I'm going to pay back my rent for that property that I took, maybe on a long lease. If you add those two things up, you're looking at on average, maybe £3,000 to £5,000 per month. If you're still earning £15,000 to £20,000 per month, and you're still earning £10,000 to £15,000 per month, paying that money back, even if it all went really, really bad, you're still in the top one, probably 0.2% of society in the UK.
The thing about what you just said there, mate, is you're thinking very objectively, and most people aren't going to think like that.
But this is the whole point. People don't think like that.
No.
And what I'm trying to say is that
it's easy for you to say that on the other side of the coin, because I do think that people don't necessarily, and it's not just the money, right? It's the shame. It's the fact that you did something. So dentists and
that's what I'm trying to say is there should be no shame in failure, because when you look at the billionaires in the world right now, there is no shame. Most of them have.
Everybody's failed.
Most of them have failed, astronomically.
Fail fast
to get to where they need to get to, but it's learning from that failure. What was it in that process that made us then succeed in the end? With dentists, I'm open to the debate 100%, but I agree they think very differently.
Oh yeah, you have to change that mindset, because failure, you'll have days where it's really you feel like you failed, but you don't it's reframing that. You don't think, oh, I've failed today.
Yeah.
Today there was a lot to learn.
Exactly that.
Today there was a lot we could improve on. Tomorrow will be better. Do you know what I mean?
So that mindset is incredible. And that mindset is the one for the winners. The people that would do really, really successful out there in the world.
And I obviously, I mean, I think the first thing I ever failed at was my driving test. And I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted when I failed my driving test. But the more because I'm super interested in this stuff, the more I look at business and read books and podcasts, and everybody fails. Like Thomas Edison, the light bulb. Yeah, he had 1,000 failed experiments before he made the light bulb.
So I don't think I've shared this with Laurie, but when I was at university, we got to third year and we had to drill a class 2 cavity. So you got to drill a hole in a tooth, and it's got to be a certain proportion or whatever. And if you don't pass that, they don't let you onto clinics. So I failed once, I failed twice. Me and one of my best friends to date both failed again. And we got one last chance. So we were back in clinics on third year or in the second year. And they basically said, this is it. Like, you do it or you get let out of dental school. That's it. And fortunately, we both passed and we hated it. And we were looking at alternative careers, different career pathways, etc. But we did it. And even off the back of that, fourth year, I failed my OSCEs. So absolutely hated dental school. I failed my AS levels. I got straight E's and D's, and then got a big kick up the arse through a lot of people to manage to get into dental school. I got kicked out of school. I got expelled twice from 2 different schools, and it was multiple failures up until the point where I started working in dentistry. And when I look back now and have the conversation with a lot of people, those failures, whatever it was, they made me the person that I am now.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that failure is a certainty in some respect. I mean, obviously, 2 of my best mates from dentistry, they failed some fairly serious exams, and they are without a doubt probably the 2 of the most successful dentists I know in my age group. So it's, I don't think it defines you. I think it's how you deal with it. It's how you get back up. It's how you turn up tomorrow, And I could go on all day about motivational speaking, all that jazz, but it's that's the key. That's the change. That's the mindset that needs to be understood. And like, I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and say I had a troubled past or whatever, because I was very lucky, very fortunate. My childhood was very good and normal, and I did well. And so I can't reflect on failure in that respect. But like, I can reflect on a lot of people call me lucky. They are, oh, Laurie, you're so lucky. Oh,
Mhm.
Laurie, you're so lucky. And it's like, no, I'm not lucky. I just work really hard and I create my own luck. And it's like, that's all about mindset for me.
Yeah,
Uh,
that aspect you just touched upon really, really pisses me off when people think that you've come from a really good upbringing and that was determinant of your success. And ultimately, nobody knows what's happening in your life.
mm,
They don't know your life story, where your parents came from, what they did to get to where they got to, in order for you to do what you do.
yeah.
And for people to say that is so unfair.
Mm,
That I'm a strong believer of that,
mm,
and I've had that a lot as well. You come from a wealthy family. Well, it's like, yeah, we do, but when we were kids, we were poor as
yeah.
fuck, literally.
Yeah.
Had nothing,
Yeah.
sleeping on mattresses, not even bed.
Yeah, I mean, so I've thought long and hard, like, where does my work ethic, my hunger come from? And I think for me, it's my dad was a doctor, consultant, cardiologist, and he used to be on call 120 hours a week. 100, and so sometimes like, it'd be Friday to Monday morning. You just would never see him. So like, I grew up just thinking that was hard, that was just normal. And then my mum's a GP, and I thought, bless her, I thought she's slacking, and she was working really hard as well. Like, that was all I knew growing up, was like, this is the amount of work you put in, and this is normal. And I'm not sure whether I think that, like, I want to be there for my kids, and I don't want to work that hard for my kids. And that's another reason that I'm doing this now, is so that hopefully I don't have to work as hard when I have kids. But ultimately, I think if you see that and you take the positive from it, that's a great motivator. For that hunger, that drive to be like, right, they did it, I can do it. And my dad regrets working so hard. He's retired now, and he says, look, I wish I was there more. So you've got to really want this. Like, unless you're super passionate and you're willing to put in the hard work, then it's probably not for you. Is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. It was the same story, when we were growing up. Parents were immigrants, working 24 hours a day, literally, to make it work and be successful, and yet costs a lot. Had the same conversations, and they 100% wish they had more time for us when we were kids. That's it. And they don't want to see us repeating the same mistakes. At the same time, there's always a conversation of, well, to be that successful and to do as much and to have that impact, there is still that back and forth no matter what, because you don't know the lines. So, from my aspect with that, when it comes to the kids, is, you know, I'm not there 24/7. And I fully respect and appreciate my wife takes a lot of the slack when it comes to raising the children. However, the time that I spend with them, are they happy? Do they enjoy that time? And do they get me without a phone, without whatever else? And that's it. And yes, and then if through the work that I'm doing, I can have a bigger impact on their lives when they grow old and understand what we're doing, then happy days. Because if they then go on to impact another, people's lives through the work that they did because they were inspired by me, then it sometimes then negates the time you spend with them.
Yeah.
It's not always about time spent.
It's quality
It's
time.
quality time, and it's about impact on other people's lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And obviously, for the work we do with Squad Success, that's a big thing for me. It's because, there's a massive impact on your quality of life,
Yeah.
so the work that you do, getting you guys to do what you need to do, but then also indirectly, the patients you're treating, I've had an indirect impact on that, on all the lives that you're changing off the back of that.
And you're very generous, I would say, with your time. Like, you give a lot of time to a lot of people. As recently, I've noticed you put more boundaries in, which I rate, and I think that's important. I think there's a happy medium, because you can't say yes to everything. Ultimately, that is just going to run you into the ground, and that's no good for anyone. And I'm sure we could spend a lot of time talking about burnout, and the effect that that has
Yeah.
on your body, your mind, everything, and your quality of care, your quality of business, everything. But ultimately, like, I agree. I think in order to be successful and to be up there, as in ultimately there's going to be someone who's going to work harder than you, who's going to put more hours in than you, and they will overtake you if you don't keep putting in the hours. So it's finding that happy intermediate of, I guess, spending the time to delegate and to give other people responsibility so they can work on your behalf. And then also it's about finding the happy medium where your time is spent in a focused manner, so you're not procrastinating, you're not wasting time, and you're actually getting things done.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I agree with that. Ultimately, it is just a case of the time that you spend. Like, are you happy doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
That's it.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I don't my days go so quick. I don't even know. I
Yeah,
don't even know because I love it. I absolutely love it. So like, I thrive off. Chaos is the wrong word, but like I thrive off being like super busy. I'm very ADHD and a bit dyslexic. So for me, I just want to bam, 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 bam. It does mean you have to have people around you who are not like that. So like we've got like a TCO slash practice coordinator who's literally writing everything I'm saying down and like putting it into manageable steps, right? But
yeah,
there's the things like that is like I love it. It'll be 8:30 in the morning, and before you know it, it's 6 o'clock. And I'm like, whoa, where'd today go? But that is, you have to be calm within a practice environment if you want the team to be calm. So that's again a work in progress of how do you find that time to speak to everyone without feeling like it's a rushed interaction. And
yeah.
that is a hard thing when you're trying to work 9 to 5 clinical and everyone wants to leave at 5:30. So it's an ongoing process.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. I mean, there's so many points I could pick up on there, Laurie,
Yeah.
but that would be literally a whole nother podcast, that episode, which I think there's going to be a number two either way.
Well, that's something you should know about me. I'm like bullet point, bullet point, bullet. I'm probably
Yeah,
already on to the next thing.
and there's a whole conversation to be had there around, teams, delegation,
Yeah,
and, building that within your practice. And,
super
ultimately
important.
for growth, you've got to learn to let go no matter
Yeah,
what, no matter how much ADHD you got, whatever it is. Unless you have that ability to learn to let go, you can't grow.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
as simple as that.
Well, that's like nowadays. I basically just come up with things and say things, and then I basically let the team. And I believe in the 80% rule, right? If they can do it to 80% of the ability or the level,
Yep.
it might take them a bit longer or whatever, but they still get a really nice outcome and they've learned that skill much better
Yep.
than me trying to do it because my time's so freaking poor and it's super precious.
Yeah, and how much is that 20% of your time more valuable doing other things
Well, that's it.
where you could be building other businesses or focusing on this business, but on a higher level?
Yeah, yeah. And it's bigger than that. It's about supporting people to grow within their
Yeah.
role. It's about them feeling supported and encouraged to do more in a safe environment where they're not scared or worried about making mistakes, but they
Yeah.
know that like someone's super grateful for the effort and the work that they're putting in.
Yep. Yeah, so I think that's a huge point to touch upon. So I was going to ask you a few other questions, but while we're there, that is massive. And I feel that is significant because I think that is one of the biggest things that has lacked in dental business in the last, 20 years in the UK. Speaking to so many different business owners, knowing the industry, inside out now, there has been a huge neglect of your team, and it's really fascinating to me because if you look outside of dental business, there's a huge focus on this in other businesses. However, within our industry specifically, it's been very much that I'm the dentist, you're the nurse, that's it, and nothing else
Yeah,
in between.
yeah,
Whereas you can build massively successful practices in dentistry if you empower your team and you teach them and you give them the autonomy to do that themselves and you find the right people, and there's a whole process behind that. But if you get the right people, then that's massive, and that's what allows you then to scale and do whatever you want to do. But I feel there's been a massive neglect of that within the industry as a whole.
yeah. And so many people run their practices on like a tiered approach, and it's very much like that's not where we're at in this day and age with business. It shouldn't be like that. So our clinic is called Thornbury Dental Wellness Clinic, right? That's all about wellness for the patients, but also wellness for the team. And it's about the team feeling supported. They are whatever they're doing, they have lots of social activities outside of work, but they are a team, they're a unit. And I think we do really well at this. And look, a lot of people have come up to us in the clinic and said, look, never worked at a clinic like this. where I feel so supported and encouraged to have my say, to make decisions, to actually have a voice. I've literally had nurses say, "Oh, dentists have never told me to talk to patients." Dentists have told
Wow.
me, yeah, dentists have told me, "No, no, I don't want you to talk to them because it's going to make me run late." And that is crazy to me. That's a small example, but it brings a bigger point of like we do a huddle every morning led by a different member of the team. They come up with like a really exciting thing that's happened the day before, and everybody is empowered to have a voice and bring things to the meeting so that we're all learning. And I'm always amazed. Like I think a good leader is someone who talks last. Yeah. So everybody else talks and then I have a say if I need to. But most of the time, the ideas and the things that are coming out, and I don't want to give away too many of our practice secrets, but most of those are not my ideas. They're my team's ideas. The
Yeah.
things that like I'm just super lucky. I've surrounded myself with people that are amazing, like really great team players. They get it. They're willing to drive. They're willing to give up their time. I have a nurse who's doing sedation training at the moment, and she's only in 3 days a week. She's come in like on the 2 days she doesn't work the last 5 weeks just to get a sedation training done. And it's like,
Yep.
that's amazing. Like she's
Yeah.
organizing extra childcare just to make sure that she gets this sorted for us because she knows it'll help out the team. It's one of many examples, but you've got to find those people and you've got to breed that culture. And it's not
Yeah.
leading by fear. Fear is done. That is a past thing now, right?
I mean, I echo that completely. Our last nurse in the practice who's got sedation trained is our youngest nurse and was the last one that came into the practice and just went, did it. No questions asked. Loved it, thrived on it. And the interesting thing was when we brought in a trainee, it was her that trained the trainee off her own back without being asked,
Mm.
even irrespective of the head nurse and the top tier team members. She just went and did it, and that was
Mm.
it. It was like, this is how we do things here. That's it, and I'm going to take responsibility for
It's
it
that initiative.
without even being asked for it. And it was
And
like, wow, like even I was shocked. I was like, that's
yeah,
incredible.
I'd say if you would have asked it and it wouldn't have been so it would have felt a bit more forced, there wouldn't have been that like, I don't know, same reception of that idea of training. So no, it's good. It's really good that you've bred that into the team.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so there's a whole conversation to be had there about team and culture and, kind of how you build that. But we're going to come to an end now shortly, Laurie. So 100%, I think there's got to be a part two to this because there's loads of the things, we can talk about or haven't explored. But a few things I want to touch upon before we leave is, when you actually set up the squat and the practice, I ask everybody these questions. So, number one is what was the three biggest things that you struggle with? Like what was hard, what was difficult, how did you overcome them? And then off the back of that, what are your three biggest tips for any dentists who are thinking about going down this journey, even if not a squat, but just going to practice ownership, knowing what you know now?
So I think the hardest thing for us was that the month before we opened, because all of a sudden everything just came at once and it was quite overwhelming. There was a lot of jobs to do. We were going through a lot of stuff with our old practice, and we just felt like there just was not enough hours in the day. And in hindsight, and after we'd had discussions, I probably should have taken more time off to focus on that because it's not like preparing for your CQC, getting all your other stuff sorted. And look, we tried to do it as quickly as possible, so we didn't give ourselves that much leeway. So we basically it worked, and we were very lucky that. Well, I shouldn't use the word lucky, but we were very, very grateful that it all worked out. There was a pinch point, and that pinch point, I think, and I know a lot of the current Squat Success delegates are going through that right now. That pinch point is a pretty tough time because there's just so much coming. You're also nervous because it's just about to launch a clinic, and you're kind of tying up all these loose ends. And dentists, we're not great at paperwork. There's a lot of paperwork to do. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So that's number one for me. And I think yeah, if I had my time again, that's the bit I would have spent a bit longer on. That's the bit that I would have 100% been a bit more. Uh, I would have just taken some more time off. Number two, look, obviously, we started the clinic with a completely fresh team, and there was all these new people that had to integrate and get used to each other. And we were
Yeah.
very, very, very lucky that they all integrated well. But we spent a lot of time out of surgery making that happen. So trying to, especially because we weren't able to take anyone from our old practices, we were a little bit further out of Bristol than we were before. We started with a completely new team. You're also fresh to recruiting. You haven't done it before. So that whole experience is new. And then you're also trying to recruit people in a building site. So you are literally sat in a building site with dust, trying to convince these people that this is going to be this amazing, beautiful practice and all that jazz. And ultimately it worked for us, but that was a lot of time spent making sure we got the right people and we taught them the right culture, the right values. So that was number two. And then number three, and Esme is much better than I am at this, okay? But it's that I still have doubts. I still have doubts. I still have bad days. And I say all these things, but I still have to remind myself and I have to really focus on being positive around certain things. So like one thing dentists are terrible at is if you have a really good day, you feel freaking great. If you have a really bad day, you feel terrible. Like it shouldn't matter if you have a good day or bad day, it's the same. And that's something I really struggle with still. So like if something isn't working out and it could be something simple like the printer's not working or for whatever reason a patient's been misbooked or something like that. And those aren't big issues, but in your head that can feel like we didn't do as well as we should have today. And you can get frustrated by that. So having that mindset to be like, and Ez is amazing at this, but having someone to say that to and soundboard off is really, really handy for me. And just being like, you know what? It wasn't the end of the world. It's fine. We're going to move forward from that and we'll be absolutely fine tomorrow. Like it just does not matter. So it's probably caring too much is what I'm getting at there. Caring too much. You've got to be mindful that it is your baby, but also
Yeah.
not I don't know, take it to heart too much.
No, I agree with that 100%. That was fantastic. One final thing I really want to ask, actually, Laurie, is before
Oh,
we start.
you're asking me for my three takeaways.
Yeah, three takeaways. But just before we get into that, just really, really quickly, we haven't spoken about this a lot, but how helpful was Esme, your partner's input, obviously, into the practice? It's hard to have this whole conversation without talking about Esme.
Yeah.
So there has to be a piece in this about her.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And not everybody is fortunate to have this. So we have dentists in Squat Success, quite a few now actually, who are setting up as partners.
Yeah.
So husband, wife, or with other partners. However, I didn't have that. Quite a lot of other dentists don't have that. So it's really interesting to hear the perspective if you do it alone or if you've got somebody within the household who is doing it with you.
Yeah. And my honest answer, uh, I don't think we'd be sitting here with the well, I probably wouldn't be sitting here full stop if I didn't have Esme. And what I mean by that is I still would have a practice, but it wouldn't be anywhere near as successful and it wouldn't be anywhere near as well maintained. And Ez is amazing because she is very much the person that makes sure everything's organized. She's on top of the compliance. She did all the CQC. She did all the interior design. She's obviously a working clinician on top of that. But we very much, I put it like a Venn diagram. I have jobs, she has jobs, and then somewhere in the middle we kind of cross over and we discuss. But being able to share that workload means that we've been able to get to a better and I don't know, the level of a normal functioning full surgery practice quite quickly compared to average. Because
Yeah.
we are able to split those responsibilities, we can trust in each other's opinions. We know that we don't have to be involved in every decision, and that's super rare. I do think that there's the other side of the coin. Okay, and the other side of the coin is like dentistry can become your whole life. So you literally will go home and you're talking about dentistry. You
Yeah.
will go out for dinner and you're talking about dentistry. So it's very hard to switch off, and that we're still working at. I don't think we're good at that at all. But having her for support, who understands exactly what I'm going through. When she has bad days, I understand what she's going through. To be able to lean on each other like that is just incredible. I can't tell you how important that is to the clinic we've built.
No, I think that's fantastic. I think it's incredible, that you have that support in the background. One of the things I'll add to that is that even though I don't have that from a clinical level, if that makes sense, as part of the business directly, having that relationship, 100%, I can still say the same. Like I wouldn't be in the position sat in this chair right now without that person in my life because fair enough, they're not in the business directly doing all of that kind of stuff, but there's other things in life that are important, that get taken care of,
Yeah.
and support for you in the background, which allows you then to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So overall, kind of thesis on that is the importance of relationships.
Yeah.
Anybody can do it alone. It's fine. However, if you're in that relationship and it's strong, you can overcome anything.
I think you need a very understanding partner
100%.
if they're going to let you do
100%.
this. Like,
100%.
because
Yeah.
I don't want to know what the stats are for I don't know, solo dentists that go and do practices and the rates, but it must be high.
I don't know. But yeah, I agree. It must be high. So I agree.
It's a
You have to have
huge amount of
you have to
stress,
have an
and
understanding
it doesn't
partner.
just affect you.
No, it's a huge amount of stress. It impacts every single part of your life without a doubt. But ultimately it will test relationships without a doubt.
We honestly,
Yeah.
we both say that we've come out of this stronger. It's been massive for our character.
But that's a huge win. And you can't even put a financial value on that.
No.
Because you know that no matter what,
Yeah.
even if it all went tits up and it wasn't a success,
Exactly. Forget
we're
about the
still
money.
we're still together.
Work.
That's it. Like
The amount of skills and the
Yeah.
growth we've both had, it would be worth it.
Yeah.
It's
Fantastic. No, thanks, Laurie. Like I said, I just really wanted to touch upon that briefly, and we can explore that more at the next one. And then the final thing was, like I was saying, 3 tips for anybody who's thinking about going into practice ownership, anybody who's going to start a squat. What are your 3 biggest takeaways, 3 biggest points that you can give to anybody who's going down this journey? And this is really, really important. It's really applicable because there's a huge amount of dentists at the moment, people that I'm speaking to, people who are going to be listening to this podcast who are at that point. Do I, don't I? I'm going to do it. If I'm going to do it, what do I learn from it? How do I go about it?
Yeah. Okay. So I would say my number 1 is location. So location. You've got to pick the right location. We spent a lot of time looking at locations before we settled on where we got to. And I'm so glad, because I know people have opened in places where we were looking, which haven't done as well. So like, you have to find a good location, because that is going to be super important. Tips on how to do that. I feel like, again, I'm giving away trade secrets here, but obviously if they've got already oversubscribed private practices, that's a good sign. Then looking at what's important to you, what's important in your patient base, what's your ideal patient look like, that is a good place to start. And then ultimately, what kind of practice are you trying to build? How much land do you need? How much space do you need? What's the size? Leasehold, freehold? Anyway, we can go on and on, but there's so many criteria you've got to get right in order to find your perfect location. Second thing is personal branding. So we talk about that a lot, but basic personal branding is how you put yourself out there. And I think people people dentistry from people. So they want to see the faces behind the business. And I think that was huge for us, is just putting ourselves out there. Some of the videos are very cringy. It took me a while to warm up to the idea. Now I bloody love the camera. But I do think that you need to get comfortable being in front of the camera, putting yourself out there, showing your personality, showing what makes you different, getting to know people in the local area.
I'm being authentic.
Yeah, if it's not you, then don't do it.
Exactly.
And yeah, obviously I said, look, I found it cringe being behind in front of the camera, but a technique that worked really well with me was just to forget the camera was there. So like, even now, we're just having a chat. It's like you just forget the camera's there, and hopefully, look, as long as you're being authentic, I'm sure people will come, and you will attract your patient base, and there will be patients like you that want to see you, whatever that may be. And then what would be my final takeaway? I think, to be honest, it's what we go back to about hunger, determination, and hard work. That's the key. You've just got to put in the hours. You've got to put in the hard work. You've got to enjoy the process. If you're not passionate, don't start, because you're going to need to do stuff that you're going to have to dig deep. You're going to have to grind it out.
And what I would add to that is if you're doing it just for the money.
Yeah, don't do it.
I mean, that's a big bugbear for me.
Most principals earn less than associates. That's the reality. So if you're doing it for the money, it's the wrong move. It's not to do with the money. The money will come, but it's a different type of money, isn't it? It's not. And for the amount of work you're doing, if you work out your hourly rate, just stay as an associate and make some.
Yeah, it's a whole debate around equity versus cash. That's where it works in my head. Anybody can make cash, and people want to make cash quick. But in this industry, yeah, there's huge amount of money to be made,
Mm,
like huge, significant. However, that's over a 20, 30 year period of time
exactly.
and equity. And then the thing I ask all the time is, why do we need so much cash so quick?
Yeah, that's
We
it.
don't. What are you going to do with it?
That's
Ultimately,
what.
unless you're going to go and sit in Dubai in a villa, next year and try and disappear. But how long is it going to last you? It won't.
Those people are normally the people who are trying to get out of dentistry.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they're the kind of people who just want to make as much money as they can as quickly as possible. This is not that strategy. That will not work. And unfortunately, that will end in tears uh, and unfortunately not achieving what you set out to achieve. Yeah, yeah, no, honestly, I think if you've got those three things, you'll do really well. I think it's an incredible journey. I think it's one of the best things I've ever done. I still enjoy it every day. I think surround yourself with the right team. Obviously, that's super important. Bobby, I remember you said to me, you said right at the beginning, you said, don't expect to have the same team in 6 months that you do today because your practice will change and therefore your team will change. And I'm glad to say we now have 13 team members and none of them have left. We have got one of our really, really experienced nurses going on maternity leave, unfortunately, but that's not my fault. So yeah, no, that's why I'm most proud that we've got a very low staff sickness rate. Everybody's super happy at work and nobody's left and we've
yeah.
really grown as a family. Like that is an amazing feeling. I feel like I've honestly gained an extended family.
No, no, it's incredible, Laurie. Like I said, from my perspective, I'm so proud to have you guys as part of the family. You and Esme, you listen, you learn, you just, you do what, is the right thing to do. And you don't do it for the wrong reasons either. You do everything for the right reasons. And, for me, that's fantastic. And I feel really privileged to have been a part of your journey. To help you guys get to where you get to today, it's brilliant for me. And the fact that, even there's some stuff that I've said to you and you prove me wrong, I love that.
Mm.
I don't feel begrudged by it. I feel like it's amazing,
And
like
that's the whole
great,
point.
because you've learned and you've taken that and put it to another level and tested it, and it's
Yeah.
great. We have a huge amount of it, and I love
There's so
debating it.
many
Yeah,
different
yeah,
ways.
exactly, exactly.
Mm.
There's nobody can replicate the same dental model.
Exactly.
That's it. So
And
in
you,
Squat Success, every single dental owner that opens their practices has a
different.
completely
Yeah.
different business model. So, I mean, you could debate it all day long, but at the
Mm.
end of the day, we all do things that work
That's
for
right.
us. Some things work, collaboratively, some things work for individual people, irrespective of, their own business models. So it's a huge area for debate, but it's finding the right people who have the right ethos to think, okay, well, I can take this nugget from
Yeah.
their business and put that into my business, and
Mm.
that might work. Or I've at least got the ability to test it. Likewise, not the people that say, oh, I'm never going to do that. That's never going to work for my business because they've got this, and this.
Yeah.
Or to have somebody say, you can't do that because that's just not true. And I think that's, one of the great things we've built about the community is that we can challenge, we can debate, we can share,
Yeah.
and we
And you've
can
got people doing
implement.
all sorts of different practices and everything
Exactly.
is flying. And that's probably one last thing to add for me. Um, particularly for the younger dentists that think, oh, if I'm going to do a squat practice, it's got to be a cosmetic clinic. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Like we do good quality private dentistry. That's what we offer. And we're doing really well doing that. But I think ultimately the young dentists have to remember like you have to be able to do everything if you want to open a squat. Because
Yep.
basically, when you have associates and they have issues, they will come to you to help them out. So like there will be times where I'm going in to help my associate, like I have to be able to do whatever the procedures they've done. So learn your craft, gain your skills, yes, some people have a real niche and they will do whatever their clinic focuses on, but it's really important that you're at a level in dentistry where the dentistry doesn't stress you out and you can focus on being a leader to the team, but also
Yeah.
um, you can hopefully be, I don't know, competent and proficient in whatever you are carrying out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. My accountants were at the last Squat Success event, and we had this whole conversation. And they've got a huge amount of dental practices on their database. And when they really look at the figures in detail, the conclusion is the same. The most successful dental practices in private dental practices are the ones who have a solid grounding in general private dentistry with a plan base who then upsell everything on top of that.
Mm.
Implants, clear aligners, whatever it is, cosmetics. It's layer upon layer upon layer like an onion. However, the ones who go into it with a sole focus on one specific thing, it is much, much harder.
Yeah.
And they are not doing as well as what most people would probably think if you look at them on social media.
Yeah, and you also got to think you got to spend more on your marketing. The benefit is you get to refine your flows, right? So your workflows, if you're just doing one specialty or one thing, it's incredibly good in terms to get a slick workflow. Whereas if you're doing general dentistry, there's so many more materials, parts, team members, everything
Yep.
to think about. So there's pros and cons, but definitely it's interesting that you say that about the accountants. Did they say what specialty was the most profitable out of interest?
No, well, this is the most profitable is general practice.
General practice.
So general practice that do everything on top of
Yeah.
that.
And I think
We're big plan bases. So it's not even profitability, but also equity. So it's also looking at exit value. So when you come to the end point, you know, how much is this business worth compared to the other business, which is basically reliant upon one individual who's selling clear aligners or implants or whatever their niche is. Because if you remove them from the business, what happens to that business?
so
Who's going to buy that business?
what is a business?
Exactly.
A business should run without you.
Exactly that.
So
Exactly that. And it goes back down to real simple basics of business principles. Yeah.
Interesting.
No, cool. Thank you very much, Laurie. That was excellent. Really, really appreciate your time today. I 100% feel there is so much more that we can talk about. Like, I mean, I know you put me in your room, we can talk all day without a doubt, but I definitely feel there's scope for a part 2 to this, and we can dive a bit more into a few key aspects. So, you know, one of the things I think I want to dive into more is number one is your team and your recruitment and how you retain that and do that, because that is difficult. Like I said, from my experience, I couldn't do that. You know, it's easier now, but back then when I started, I couldn't. Second aspect is looking at more the nitty gritty, you know, of actually setting up a squat. You know, what was the real, you know, kind of tough points, and going into a bit more of, you know, how they actually run the practice, you know, to kind of build what you've done so far. So if you're open to that, then brilliant. Yeah, we'd love to have you back.
Good to explore a bit about, because there's lots of different ways to get that skill set. But like, how do you actually get the skill set to run a dental business? Is it something you're just born with? Is it something you have as a natural leader? Is there such a thing as a natural leader? It would be nice to like have a good discussion on that, because that's something I'm quite passionate about. Yeah, that'd be great, mate.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Laurie. So yeah, we'll see you again very, very soon. Also, if anybody wants to reach out to you off the back of this, where can they find you?
Blimey. You can either message, probably Instagram's the easiest, but Smiles by Laurie or Thornbury Dental Wellness. Yeah, just drop me a message on Instagram and then I'll get back to you when I can.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Mate, it was lovely speaking.
Cool.